الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم في ذكر الله لا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب أفضل ذكر فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا 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 الله 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله سيدنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. يا رجالي هذه هذا تهنئة خصوصا نبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أن الله يكثر مرتباتهم ويضاعف حسناتهم ويحفظ أجرهم وينفعنا بهم ويعيد علينا من بركاتهم وأنوارهم ونفحاتهم وعلومهم في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. الفاتحة. يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم. Bismillah. All right, we're continuing in the handout that we gave. You're going to be at the heading called, and I miswrote that, you're going to be at the heading called Invocations After the Fajr in the Dawn Prayer. Inshallah, we've prayed that. Well, we've prayed it. It'll be page 133 or 4. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alif Lam Mim.
ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك بالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون وإلهكم إله واحد لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أقدم إليك بين يدي كل نفس ولمحة ولحظة وخطرة وطرفة يطرف بها أهل السماوات والأرض وكل شيء هو في علمك كائن وقد كان. أقدم إليك بين يدي ذلك كله. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. من الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم.
لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض
وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. وأنا أشهد بما شهد الله به وأشهد الله على ذلك وأستودع الله هذه الشهادة وهي لي عند الله وديعة أسأله حفظها حتى يتوفاني عليها. إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. قل اللهم مالك الملك اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير.
الليل في النهار وتولج النهار في الليل وتخرج الحي من الميت وتخرج الميت من الحي وترزق من تشاء بغير حساب. رحمن الدنيا والآخرة ورحمهما تعطي من تشاء منهما وتمنع من تشاء. أنت ترحمنا فرحمنا رحمة تغنينا بها عن رحمة من سواك. اللهم اقض عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد
لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. We're continuing in this handout, Al-Khulasa. And the next heading, you just keep scrolling. It will be the Word of Sayyidina Shaykh Abu Bakr bin Salim. If you've just arrived, that'll be on page 145 or 146. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا عظيم السلطان يا قديم الإحسان يا دائم النعم يا كثير الجود يا واسع العطاء يا خفي اللطف يا جميل الصنع يا حليم لا يعجل
صل يا ربي على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم وارض عن الصحابة أجمعين. اللهم لك الحمد شكرا ولك المن فضلا وأنت ربنا حقا ونحن عبيدك رقا وأنت لم تزل ذلك أهلا. يا ميسر كل عسير ويا جابر كل كثير ويا صاحب كل فريد
ويا مغني كل فقير ويا مقوي كل ضعيف ويا مأمن كل مخيف يسر علينا كل عسير
فتيسير العسير
عليك يسير. اللهم يا من لا يحتاج إلى البيان والتفسير حاجاتنا كثير وأنت أعلم منها وخبير. اللهم إني أخاف منك وأخاف ممن يخاف منك
وأخاف
مما لا يخاف منك. اللهم بحق من يخاف منك نجنا مما لا يخاف منك. اللهم بحق سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم احرسنا بعينك التي لا تنام
وكنفنا بكنفك الذي لا يرام وارحمنا بقدرتك علينا
فلا نهلك وأنت ثقتنا ورجاؤنا.
وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم
والحمد لله رب العالمين عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته.
اللهم إنا نسألك زيادة في الدين وبركة في العمر وصحة في الجسد وسعة في الرزق وتوبة قبل الموت وشهادة عند الموت ومغفرة بعد الموت
وعفوا عند الحساب وأمانا من العذاب ونصيبا من الجنة.
وارزقنا النظر إلى وجهك الكريم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته.
وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد
لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب
ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق
من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس
الذي يوسوس
في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك رب أن يحضرون.
ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك رب أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون. فتعالى الله الملك الحق لا إله إلا هو رب العرش الكريم. ومن يدعو مع الله إلها آخر لا برهان له به فإنما حسابه عند ربه إنه لا يفلح الكافرون. وقل رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون. يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. والله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. سلام على نوح في العالمين إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. رضيت بالله ربا بالإسلام دينا بسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبي ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا بالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبي ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا بسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبي ورسولا. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت رب العرش العظيم.
حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت ورب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت ورب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت ورب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت ورب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت ورب العرش العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم.
اللهم صل على
سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم إني أسألك من فجاءة الخير وأعوذ بك من فجاءة الشر. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت
وأبوء لك
بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت عليك توكلت
وأنت رب العرش العظيم.
ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة
أنت آخذ بناصيتها
إن ربي على صراط مستقيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث
ومن
عذابك أستجير. أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي
ولا إلى أحد من
خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن
وأعوذ بك من
العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وكر الرجال.
اللهم
إني أسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة
في ديني ودنياي
وأهلي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتي وآمن رواتي. اللهم احفظني من بين يدي ومن خلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي ومن فوقي. وأعوذ بعظمتك أن أغتال من تحتي. اللهم أنت خلقتني وأنت تهديني وأنت تطعمني وأنت تسقيني وأنت تميتني وأنت تحييني وأنت على كل شيء قدير. أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وعلى كلمة الإخلاص
وعلى دين نبينا
ومحمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم بك أصبحنا
وبك أمسينا
وبك نحيا وبك نموت وعليك نتوكل وإليك النشور. أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله
والحمد لله رب العالمين.
اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبركته وهداه. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم
وخير ما فيه
وخير ما قبله وخير ما بعده. وأعوذ بك من شر هذا اليوم
وشر ما فيه
وشر ما قبله وشر ما بعده. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة
أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر
على ذلك. سبحان الله وبحمده
عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومداد
كلماتي. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومداد كلماتي.
سبحان الله
وبحمده عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي
وزنة عرشي
ومداد كلماتي. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقي
ورضا نفسي
وزنة عرشي ومداد كلماتي. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومداد كلماتي. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه ومداد كلماته سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في السماء سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض سبحان الله عدد ما بين ذلك سبحان الله عدد ما هو خالق الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في السماء الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في الأرض الحمد لله عدد ما بين ذلك الحمد لله عدد ما هو خالق لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في السماء لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض لا إله إلا الله عدد ما بين ذلك لا إله إلا الله عدد ما هو خالق الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في السماء الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في الأرض الله أكبر عدد ما بين ذلك الله أكبر عدد ما هو خالق لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في السماء لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في الأرض لا إله إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما بين ذلك لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما هو خالق لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير
عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة
لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير
عدد كل ذرة ألف
مرة لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد
مفتاح باب رحمة الله
عدد ما في علم الله صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة مرة اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة رضا نفسي وزنة عرشي مدار كلماته أن الله يولي درجات في الجنة ويكثر من تبعتهم ويضاعف حسناتهم ويحفظ الجاهلين وينفعنا بهم وإذا لينا من بركاتهم ومن منفعتهم من في الدين والدنيا والآخرة وفقنا نتوقع تبليغها ونعم النبي والبلد بسنة والنبي وأن يجعل نياتنا في نياتنا وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم الفاتحة الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Today we are going to read the beginning of guidance instead of sacred knowledge, aims, and objectives, and that is because the reader, the Tariq Toreh, whose lesson that is, he's out of town, inshallah. So we'll resume that, and I believe it'll be next week, and we will read from beginning of guidance today, inshallah ta'ala, after just a moment. Sit where Muslim can see you. Bismillah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Radiyallahu ankum. Conceit, arrogance, and pride. Conceit is a deep-seated disease. It is when the servant looks at himself with the eye of honor and self-glorification, while looking at others with the eye of lowliness and disdain. Its effect on the tongue is that he says, I this and I that.
Allahu
As
Akbar.
accursed Iblis said, I am better than him. You created me from fire, and you created him from clay. Its result, when in company, is believing oneself to be above others, seeking to have precedence and to take pride of place at gatherings and discussion. It results in an aversion to being contradicted. The arrogant person is one who, when warned, haughtily rejects the advice, yet, when warning others, does so aggressively. Anyone who sees himself as better than one of Allah's creatures is arrogant. Rather than being arrogant, you should realize that the virtuous one is the one considered virtuous by Allah in the final abode, and that is something that is unseen and depends upon one's state at death. Your conviction, therefore, that you are better than others is pure ignorance. Rather, you should not look at any other person without seeing that he is better than you, that his merit surpasses yours, and yourself as nothing. If you see a child, you should say to yourself, this child has not transgressed against Allah, and I have, so certainly he is better than me. If you see an older person, say, this person is better than me, he has been worshiping Allah longer than I have. If you see a knowledgeable person, say, this person has been given what I have not been given, and has reached in rank what I have not reached, and he knows what I am ignorant of. So how could I be like him? If you see an ignorant person, say, this person has transgressed against Allah Most High in ignorance, while I have done so knowingly. So Allah's evidence against me is greater. And what do I know about what my final state at death will be and what his final state will be? And if you see an unbeliever, say, I don't know, maybe he will become a Muslim and his life will be sealed with the best of deeds. And for his Islam, he will emerge free of sin. As a strand of hair is gently removed from dough. As for me, Allah could cause me to go astray so that I become of the unbelievers, and my life could be sealed with the worst of deeds. So tomorrow, this person might be of the ones drawn not nigh to Allah, and I of the distant ones.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Arrogance will not be removed from your heart until you realize that the truly great person is he who is great in the sight of Allah Most High, and that this depends on one's final state, which is uncertain. Because of this uncertainty, your fear of a bad end should preoccupy you and keep you from being arrogant toward Allah's servants. The fact of your present certainty and faith does not lessen the possibility of change in the future. For indeed, Allah is the change of hearts. He guides whom he wills and leaves to stray whom he wills.
Allahu Akbar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'ina lahum bi ihsan ila yawmiddin wa alayna ma'ahum wa fihim bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Jazakallahu khairan. Alhamdulillah. So the sister, and also wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, on behalf of all of those who are physically learning here. Some brothers and sisters sent you all salams. Sada, mashallah, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sada. We're reading from the beginning of guidance. And what page were you reading from?
116.
116. And this was on what's translated to arrogance, pride, and conceit. We intend to inquire and impart knowledge. What tadhkir wal mudhakara wal nafa wal intifa wal ifada wal istifada. We intend to remind others and ourselves remember, to give and take benefit, to profit mutually. Wal hatha ala tamassuki bi kitabillahi wa bi sunnati rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. We intend encouraging adherence to Allah's book and the sunnah of Allah's best messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَالدُّعَاءِ إِلَى الْهُدَى. We intend summoning to guidance. وَالدِّلَالَةَ عَلَى الْخَيْرِ. We intend leading to good. إِبْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ وَمَرْضَاتِهِ وَقُرْبِ ثَوَابِهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. All of that we intend seeking Allah's countenance, pleasure, nearness, and reward. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. We intend what the author intended, who is Hujjatul Islam, Al-Imam Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, as well as the pious and what Allah knows of good intentions. we ask him to accept. Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. Naam, the Imam is continuing to offer nasiha, sincere goodwill and counsel that comes from sincere goodwill. Allahu Akbar. And here he's talking about al-ujbu wal-kibru wal-fakhr. That he tries to say, he says, what? Pride, arrogance, and conceit. Is that how he translates those three? Conceit, arrogance, and pride. Okay. So he's translating al-ujub as conceit, al-kibr as arrogance, which is how I tend to translate it, and al-fakhr as pride, if he's abiding by the order of the author. And ujub, he's going to go into it, but ujub is essentially, it's also translated as vainglory. It's the I in the saying of shaitan that Allah reveals, transmitting what shaitan said, ana khayrun minhu. So when he says I, he attributes to himself. With the other bidan, he forgets Allah having given him everything he has. So that's what's ujub. Ujub is to see yourself as having a virtue, give yourself credit for it, and forget Allah is giving it to you. So the focal point is the self rather than Allah. Whereas if someone said Allah gave me this, that would be gratitude. But if someone said I am this, then that's ujub. And we seek refuge in Allah from that. Muhammad and Kibr will stem from that, which is to look down on others who one sees as possessing less of that. Al-Kibru, the Prophet ﷺ defined it, Batarul Haq wa Ghamtun Nas, and that's it's right, that's explaining in more brief terms what Imam Al-Ghazali said. Al-Kibru, this translated here is arrogance, if I'm understanding his order, is rejecting the truth and looking down on people. And he said, An-Nas, so looking down on anyone in humanity is Kibr. And al-Fakhr is like, he translates that as, not conceit, pride. It's like boasting about seeing yourself as more prestigious and boasting about what you possess or viewing yourself as like that. Allahu Akbar. So he says that, and they're related, right? So he treats them all as one ailment. He says al-ujbu wal-kibru wal-fakhru fahuwa da' al-idal. It's the uncurable disease or the difficult disease. And in Ihya, in the revival, he says that everyone has some amount of kibr. Everyone will have some amount of kibr. Knowledge of it in the cure is personally obligatory. Knowledge of it in its cure is personally obligatory. So that means all of us are obliged, according to Imam Ghazzali, to learn diseases of the heart like this and their cures. And may Allah grant us that. So he defines it, he says, it's nadar al-abd ila nafsihi bi'ayn al-izz wal-isti'adham wa ila ghayrihi bi'ayn al-ihtikar wal-dhul. He said, this is looking at the self with an eye of that it's great and magnificent. So bigging yourself up, and looking at others, looking down, holding them in contempt and lowliness. And you could take his translation would be eloquent, that sentence. How does he translate that sentence? Hold the mic, please, when you do it.
It is when the servant looks at himself with the eye of honor and self-glorification while looking at others with the eye of lowliness and disdain.
Yeah. And these definitions are important. They help us recognize these diseases. And every time he gives a cure, he'll say the cure, or typically the Imam, he'll say the cure is a combination of knowledge and practice, or knowledge and work. So understanding what the thing is part of the knowledge. And also it will help you recognize a bad notion in your heart. And the notion occurring is not what you're responsible for. It's like accepting it, talking about it, acting on it, you're responsible for. So recognizing its ugliness is a part of rejection and a part of the cure. And we mentioned at the beginning of this section on the heart, kafaratul khatira as-sayyi'a karahatuha, the expiation of a wicked notion is disliking it. But if you don't recognize what it is and its wickedness, it's harder to dislike it. Whereas if you learn this is, oh, that was kibr, that's ujub, that's hasad, that's riyah, you could recognize them and dislike them, which is an expiation for them. And shayateen will whisper those, of course. Shayateen and even the environment. I met one Muslim who was supposed to be counseling people. They have been trained here, Western psychology. So one of the questions in the counseling is, what are you proud of? So they wanted to counsel people by teaching them ujb. And we seek refuge in Allah from that. And even one of the people responded, well, I was taught you're not supposed to be proud. And then they gave that another explanation about how the deen, people in the deen. And this same person said, they said this to us, that I've never known any imam or sheikh who had this psychology that I have. But anyway, so you might get these notions disseminated from all over the place, from shayateen, from the nafs itself will want that. The nafs wants to be divine. So there are divine attributes which are unbecoming of a slave. So the slave trying to be characterized by those attributes like al-kibriya and al-azama, that's blameworthy. The way the slave relates to those attributes is doing the opposite. But if the slave does that, that does give them an experience of those attributes, which is good. But to try to raise oneself to that is not good. So the nafs might do it, or shayateen, or even, God forbid, people around you. And we should be very careful who we allow to educate our children, because they will literally teach them ujub. And we seek refuge in Allah from that. Our children or ourselves and our young adults. And waliyadu billah ta'ala. And as was mentioned before, where did we cover it? I don't feel like it was this book. There's a book we read in the last couple of weeks. Might have been a section of this. Yeah, it was the beginning of this heart section in this book, where he said that knowledge is lost. Knowledge and practice of the heart is lost. So even among Muslims, there will be those that if you don't be careful who you offer your young people and the family and yourself to learn from, they'll teach things like ujub and kibr as like confidence, self-confidence, esteem, leadership qualities, and actually vice is being taught waliyadu billah ta'ala. And he said the result on the tongue is to say I, ana wa ana kama, ana wa ana, just say I. So you could say ujub is a very self-centered vice. It's a trait, because literally it's attributing things to the self and forgetting Allah. It's giving the self credit for what Allah did, subhanahu, what Allah gave you. And Iblis, the cursed, he said, ana khayrun minhu. So his saying, there's ujub. Ujub is more subtle than a riya. So the person who's doing riya, he's looking at creation, right? He's looking at creation from without. Those who are around him, he's looking at them. And that's become his focus rather than Allah. The person of ujub, he's looking at creation too, but he's looking within, right? He's big in his own eyes rather than Allah. The riya person, other people are bigger than Allah in their eyes about this worship. So they show off to them rather than focusing on Allah. Person of ujub is showing off for himself. He's looking at himself, waliyadu billah ta'ala. But that'll result in arrogance that does have a component extended to others, looking down on them. And we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that. Imam Al-Ghazali, he said, if you've dealt with two people, they both mistreat you. One of them, like for example, you had given them charity or taught them or something like that. The other you've done nothing for, right? If you're angry at the one who you perceive yourself as having done something for, then the one who you don't perceive yourself having done something for, that's ujub. You still have ujub in your heart. Because the person, if we said alhamdulillah and la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, then in reality what it means is we don't deserve anything, and we've done absolutely nothing at a level of haqiqah, right? And forget the explanations of the nafs. Oh, well, I'm trying to teach them that the one who hasn't thanked people hasn't thanked Allah. Unless it's your child, maybe, and you could do it while guarding your heart totally, that lesson is for someone else to teach. Your lesson is to totally divest yourself of taking credit for what Allah did. Because if you did do something for him, that was a gift to Allah from you, for which we owe Allah more, and that they've helped us with. And that's some of the basis of that. He said, "Ana khayrun minhu, astaghfirullah. Khalaqtani min narin wa khalaqtahu min teen." So Iblis is Allah protect us from the accursed. He's a supremacist. He's a species supremacist, though, not a racial supremacist. He sees himself, the species of jinn, as superior for him. And he would have been arrogant towards other jinn too, right? Just keeps going. And he said the fruit in gatherings is raising yourself in the gathering and putting yourself ahead of others and trying to be at the front. So that brings us to a point. So Imam Ghazali, he teaches a knowledge and practical basis of removing al-kibr. The remedy of ujab, of what's translated here as conceit, giving yourself credit, is knowledge, because conceit is entirely ignorance. The person is forgetting Allah, he's ignorant of Allah, and he's giving himself credit or herself credit for what Allah did. It's just ignorance. So its remedy is knowledge, learning about Allah, what's really happening. What's really happening. And al-kibr, its remedy consists of proper reflection. So, and all of this that he's mentioning, much of it is a basis of reflection. And from the basis he gives is reflecting on your origin, where you are and where you're headed. The origin being earth, or the origin being before that, actually the origin being semen, for example, and eggs, right? You just excretions. If it was on the floor, it would be grotesque, right? Your origin before that is earth. خلقته من طين. Before that, nothing. هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا. You weren't even anything. So what's less than nothing? Nothing, zero. Didn't even exist. Dirt, what's lower than dirt? What's more base than semen? And that's what you are. Abu Bakr said, it's amazing that the human being be arrogant, and he's come out of the urinary passageway twice. Came out once into his mother and once out of his mother, right? That's where he came from. So how would he raise himself up? We seek refuge in Allah from that. So that and other types of, other sayings, and Allah recounts our origin in the Quran much. And then in the middle, after being nothing, Allah made us something, gave us life, property, speech, hearing, sight, all of these things. That's what Allah has given us. So we'll be grateful, and as a trial, not that we be arrogant towards the slaves. So those are gifts, and then our return is to being earth, decomposing, not being able to speak anymore, do anything in the world, and then to be resurrected. So reflecting on that helps put things in perspective, and also the practical part of the cure is to do the works, to act like the humble. To work against acting like the conceited, or here the arrogant, and to act like the humble. So he mentions these are examples of arrogant behavior, of conceited and haughty behavior. So he said, in gatherings, raising yourself up in the gathering, putting yourself ahead of others, seeking to be at the front of the gathering. So what do? As a practical cure, you do the opposite. You lower yourself in the gathering. And in the modern world, some of these etiquettes are not very boldly apparent like they would have been in the old world. So, like for example, at a table, the head is the sadr, right? The head of the table was the important position. The father, for example, would sit there, or the host would sit there, or the head of the board might sit there. And then the closer you get to that, the higher the position, and then the further you get from that, the lower the position is. So recognize and intuitively, someone recognizes that. If they want to put themselves there, then they must have understood that it was somewhere that was important. But what does one do? One does the opposite. In gatherings, rather than putting oneself to the front ahead of others, one does the opposite, especially if they're elders, for example. Like Abe, when we were studying, how many times, I don't remember how many times our teacher, Habib Omar, would stop a big majlis, like not a small majlis, like hundreds of people size majlis among students. And La ilaha illallah. So there might be the Roha, the after Asr lesson. And he might say, okay, everyone who's over 40, come up to the front. Everyone who's reading Minhaj, come up to the front. All the teachers come up, boom. And then teaching them how to, sit properly and honor those who deserve to be honored. And also that's a lesson in humility. La ilaha illallah. So we should work on that, inshallah ta'ala. And he said in speech, disliking to be contradicted and being haughty towards and aggressive when we remind others, and Allah protect us from that and forgive us for that. And the Prophet said that batrul haq, it's rejecting the truth. Kibru batrul haq, and it reaches the extent, and the Imam mentions this in Ihya, where there's takabbur towards prophets. Certainly, if only they sent this message as one of the great men of the two cities, right? How can we listen to this young man who's just the orphan grandson of Abu Abdul Muttalib? If he had sent it towards someone great, we could listen. That's arrogance. Waliyadu billah, and it even reaches the point of Allah. They be arrogant towards Allah, reject the truth Allah sends them, and we seek refuge in Allah from that. May Allah protect us. That it leads to kufr. It attacks the basis. That's one of the reasons the Imam says it's so dangerous. La yadkhul, someone will not enter paradise who has a particle's weight of kibr in their heart. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught us. So that's a big deal. Sahih hadith. That hadith is sahih. The boys can do shuruk and go, inshallah. Yep. So that is a sahih hadith. Allah protect us from that. So that means we have to really work on that. And Allah give us to understand His greatness and perceive it, which is really what removes all perception of the greatness of the self, is by really the heart's real perception of Allah's greatness. Man tawada'a lillah rafa'ahu Allah. If someone humbles himself to Allah, so in reality tawadu is to Allah. Rafa'ahu Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the deep tawadu. May Allah grant us that in afiyah. Allahu Akbar. So he said, Kullu man ra'a nafsahu khayran min ahadin min al-khalqi ta'ala fahuwa mutakabbir. There's an excellent definition to learn. It's the fa'ida we said, intending ifada with istifada, given, taking fa'ida. Here's a fa'ida. Kullu man ra'a nafsahu khayran min ahadin min al-khalqi ta'ala min khalqi Allah ta'ala fahuwa mutakabbir wa liyadu billah. Everyone who views himself as superior to any one of Allah's creatures, he is arrogant, and we seek refuge in Allah from that. He mentions examples now, and this is a knowledge basis, proper fikr, proper thought about this question. And Imam Al-Ghazali is a great thinker. perhaps, outside of the prophets, he's the greatest thinker there's ever been, because he's our greatest theologian. So there's a dream of Abu Hassan al-Shadhili where he sees as though he's in Jerusalem, may Allah give it ease. And so Abu Hassan al-Shadhili, rahimahullah, sees a dream. He's in Bayt al-Maqdis. There's a Prophet ﷺ and Musa. Musa asked Prophet Muhammad, you said that the scholars, the learned of your community are like the prophets of mine. So can you show me one of these scholars? So he introduces him to Imam al-Ghazali in this dream. And then there's a discourse before them. Maybe it's a little beyond our scope. So he's teaching us how to think properly, and we have to adjust our thinking. We shouldn't learn the thought of unbelievers. By definition, their understanding of reality is different than ours. So if thoughts based on truth and reality, and kind of judging things and having a proper perspective of things based on comparing them and reflecting on them, if we eliminate Allah and the unseen and the hereafter, how will we have sound thought? The components of it are absent. The major components of it are absent. So we shouldn't think like unbelievers. And our Muslim brothers and sisters, we get affected like this. I had someone ask me in the local suburbs, and not to focus on the suburbs, but there's a type of kufr thought that they're going to be in more danger of than people in other environments, just to their educational tract. So they said, we were teaching about humility or something, and I guess in the corporate world, they regard like Midwestern humility as a cause of not excelling or progressing as much. It appears that that's something this person had read. So they asked, like, how do we deal with that? Like, how do I raise my kid to be this aggressive corporate person and not this Midwestern humble person, because I want them to excel at what I've made a goal? That's dangerous, Yani. That's dangerous. That's improper thought. That when I hear humility, which is a good translation for tawadu, and a virtue that any godly person would admire, I guarantee you that's not coming out of the Bible. Midwestern humility is not a good thing. That's coming from somewhere else. So that's an example of fallacious. That's a fallacy that humility will put you behind. I don't even think it's good business. We monitor certain like business books, like this book Good to Great, about how companies excel, how to win friends and influence people, about how people be influential. And what I see as a thread through all of those works is good character makes someone excel, right? Good character is what gets people ahead. If you look at those works, successful companies, what are they? Companies with good character. They're shura, they love each other. They quickly, they do blameless retrospectives. They're willing to be criticized and see where could they improve and what have you. La ilaha illallah. So we got to correct thinking, inshallah. So here's an example of correct thinking from this great, great Imam. La ilaha illallah. So he said, what you should know is that khair, that good is what's good with Allah in the akhirah. So the ultimate standard of anyone can't even be determined until the akhirah, and it's not determined by us, it's determined by Allah. It's unseen. It's not for us to like, and so, but we have to be thinking and reflecting on the akhirah, right? So I don't know. I don't have to know yet. It's not done, right? We'll see when we get there, inshallah ta'ala. And in the meantime, we do know what we have to do. We have to work for it. He said that's unseen. Who's better in the akhirah is unseen. Even if they appear to have died in disbelief, it's unseen. That's why you can't do la'an, as he said. Can't curse them. Somebody died an unbeliever, there's no sacred text informing us about the unseen of their damnation, then you can't declare their damnation. You can't say God damn them. Someone there is a text about, you could do that, but would you be rewarded for it? You may not be rewarded for it, right? But excluding Allah telling you, I've damned someone to hell, you can't say that. Why? Because it's unseen. Even if they appear to die. Hitler, could you say it about him? No, you can't. You don't know how he died. And it's not our business. You're not going to be rewarded. Who made us the accountant of Hitler? We're not the accountant. We're not supposed to count that. We're supposed to work on counting our wird. That's what you count. Count your wird. Count how well you're doing at your wird. وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينُ. Just worship Allah till your king comes. In the akhirah, like one of the shuyukh said, American shuyukh, Allah yahfadhu, it'll be the greatest history lesson of all. There are many things will be put in proper perspective, but it's Allah to judge, not us. He said, La ilaha illallah. So that's the good. The akhirah is good. And he said, that is based on the seal of the deeds. So you don't know to how someone's deeds are going to be sealed. And he says, so you're coming to a conclusion of your superiority over another person is entirely ignorance. It's making a conclusion without knowledge, which is ignorance. This man's a great scholar and thinker. Don't come to conclusions without knowledge. So that's another thing that's beneficial for seekers of knowledge. Get in the habit of saying, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't researched it. I haven't been informed of it. It's not for me to determine. Determinations are based on knowledge. I haven't been given that knowledge yet. And this is something that's ghaib for everyone, except when Allah's revealed it from the ghaib. And that's, for example, like Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab is in hell. Allah told us that, right? But excluding Allah having done that, it's unseen for us, nor is it our business. And he said, but rather the perspective we should have is look, if you look at anyone, that you not look at anyone except that you see him as superior to you. And that is like you work at that view. You work at that view by looking at their virtues. Because in reality, if you don't know your seal and you don't know their seals, really you don't know who's better, right? But you could say as an exercise in adab, and Sha'rani, he said, the basis of adab is to see perfection with others and fault with you, right? That'll make you a person of adab, and he's teaching that here. In further books, they'll even remove it further, where we never even come to conclusions anymore, right? Where Allah knows. So it's just focusing on Allah. Here, though, beginners like us, we need to work at this. So when we see people think about their virtues and our vices and come to the conclusion that if they have those virtues, then they must be better than us. And I should behave towards them like I'm dealing with the superior. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. He said, and that he has a merit over you. And he said, so you see a child, say this person has never disobeyed Allah and I've disobeyed Allah. So undoubtedly they're superior to me. If you see an old person, this person has worshipped Allah before me, longer than me, so without doubt they're better than me. If you see La ilaha illallah, a learned person, say Allah has given them what He hasn't given me. You see, memorize the Quran. Allah gave them what He didn't give me, and they have attained what I've not attained. They're knowledgeable and I'm ignorant. Then how could I be like them? If the person's ignorant and you view yourself as possessing some knowledge, then say this person disobeyed Allah in ignorance and I disobeyed Allah in knowledge. So Allah's case against me is firmer, right? And that comes right in hadith, that the guards of hell start with the wicked learned men, and they say the one who knows is not like the one who doesn't know. We seek refuge in Allah from that. And I don't know what my seal will be and what his seal will be. And this is a real basis. I don't know what my seal is and what his seal is. If the person is an unbeliever, you say, unbeliever. I don't know, maybe this person will embrace Islam. He'll seal that as his deeds. How many of us know people that embrace Islam on their deathbed? Many of us, many Muslim parents of those, or non-Muslim parents of those who convert to Islam, end up giving shahada on their deathbed because they've seen the good of Islam. They just hadn't been able to, embrace it until they were realizing what was imminent. Then they got right. Allah guided them. They embraced Islam on their deathbed. He said, so maybe this person will seal his deeds. He'll embrace it, and then he'll leave all of his sins, just like a hair would be pulled out of some dough. Just slip out all his sins, miskeen. He's straight. He's going in the akhirah with no accounting. Allah saved up for him this one great work at the end, remove all of his sins. That's a muwaffaq person. They live their whole life enjoying themselves, and kufr is not enjoyable, but indulging, embrace Islam at the end, go into the akhirah. Allah could give that to someone. But we ask Allah to give us good Islam. since he's made us Muslims, and be a cause of guidance. And then so the person could say, we seek refuge. Maybe Allah will allow me to go astray, and I'll disbelieve and die as a disbeliever. Right? This person might have a good ending, husnul khatima. That's why we always ask Allah, Ya Allah, bi husnul khatima. Allah, give me a good end. And I might have su'al khatima. And Abu Darda, he's a companion, he would swear an oath. No one feels safe of losing their faith except they'll lose it. Right? So we should all be worried about having a bad turn, and ask Allah for a good ending, not a bad ending. And realize that the ending is unseen. Our ending is unseen. And so somebody who appears like they're not in a good state, and I say appears because that's what you see, but there's much you don't see about that person. Maybe they have amazing tahajjud or charity or other hidden works, and they're one of the great salihin who's just acting like a regular person, and they do all of these good works behind the scenes. And we don't know, and that's not unlikely at all. There's many people like that in the world and in the ummah. And he said, so this person, if I have an evil ending and they have a good ending, unbeliever, they'll be of those brought near to Allah, and I'll be of those who are banished, who are removed from Allah. La ilaha illallah. And he said, so nothing will remove arrogance from your heart except knowing that the one who's really of great station is the one who's great with Allah. And that is based on the seal, and the seal is unknown. So let yourself be preoccupied with fear of a bad ending from being arrogant about something that's unknown towards any of Allah's creatures. So I'm saying, let our own awareness of the hereafter and the potential of the end preoccupy us and be our focus, so that we don't have time to be, based on really weak evidence, seeing ourselves as superior to anyone. And your certitude, your yaqeen, and your iman, your faith, at present, that does not nullify that does not remove the possibility of your having a change in the future. Because Allah is the one who makes hearts fluctuate. Qalb is this, qalaba, to turn something over. And this is taqallub, fluctuating, flip-flopping. And the qalb comes from that word because it quickly fluctuates. The heart, this time it's of strong faith, the next time it's of weak faith, this time it's present, the next time it's heedless. This times it's happy, sad, hopeful, fearful. It's always fluctuating. And Allah is the one who makes the hearts turn. He's muqallib al-qulub, the one who turns and fluctuates hearts. So the Prophet would often say, "O turner of hearts, make my heart firm on your deen." So Allah is the muqallib. He guides who He wills, and He leads astray those whom He wills. So then, if that's the case, then other than surrender to Allah and begging, what do we have? Rather than taking it back to Allah, begging, what do we have? And if instead of begging Allah, we go mistreat His creatures, that's not a good thing. That doesn't hail of a good ending. We seek refuge in Allah from that. And the pious would reach wondrous states in this. So like Abu Bakr al-Adani, the son of Abdullah bin Abi Bakr al-Aydrus, his father tested him before he sent him to go do dawah in Aden. And he said, go find someone that's worse than you in Tarim. So he went through this type of reflection. And the Sadat, especially Al-Aydrus, heavily drew from the books of Imam Al-Ghazali, rahimahumullah. So young Abu Bakr bin Abdullah Al-Aydrus, he went and he said, this one's older than me, he's worshipped Allah longer. This one's younger than me, he's not sinned. This one's ignorant, and I've been taught, so I've disobeyed Allah with knowledge, and he hasn't, so the case is worse. He went through this type of reflection. Then he found a dead dog, and he tied a strap around it and began dragging it to his dad so he could show him that this is worse than me. And then he thought, well, wait, on Yom Al-Qiyamah, the dog will be resurrected for any accounting, that any mistreatment of creatures or mistreatment he experienced, so justice can be done. Animals are resurrected. Then animals, Allah returns them to dirt. And the disbelievers see that. They see, oh man, those animals, they got it easy. They're, after judgment, they're just going to be dirt. And they're looking, everybody's seeing hellfire at this point. Khalas, it's all certain. So the disbeliever says what Allah articulates on his tongue, or reveals as what he'll say. وَيَقُولُ الْكَافِرُ يَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ تُرَابًا. The unbeliever will say, if only I could be dirt like these animals. So young Abu Bakr al-Adani said, well, if I die on a bad ending as a disbeliever, I wish to be in the position this dog would be in. So he'd be better than me too. So then he said, I couldn't find anyone worse. He went back to his father. And that was a test that he passed prior to going out to call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a similar narration is transmitted from Uwais al-Qarni. Dog, I don't know if you're better or I'm better. If I have a bad ending, if I have a good ending, I cross the bridge and go to paradise, I'm better. And if I have a bad ending, I wish that I was dirt like you'll be, so you're better. May Allah give us to surrender to Him. And dhikr will help us with this. It'll help us teach about what real greatness is, what real adama is, right? And those are attributes that the servant cannot deliberately embody. Allah can give them a great station. And if they humble themselves to the majestic attributes, Allah can place a garment of those majestic attributes on them, so they're an awe-inspiring servant, but they didn't deliberately act that way. Allah clothed them in that jalal, whereas they worked at embodying jamal and humbling themselves and divesting themselves from jalal. And that prepares a servant to receive kamal. And may Allah give us to know Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and focus on Him. And you look at a lot of the cause of all of this vice, we seek refuge in Allah, is not focusing on Allah, right? In Riyah, they focus on the creation instead of Allah. In Ujub, they focus on the creation instead of Allah. So dhikr will help us a whole lot. It'll drive away demons that bring these bad thoughts, and also attract angels that bring good thoughts, and remind our hearts about Allah and teach us about His attributes, which ultimately is the cure for these vices. And the utmost extent of the cure that a person attains is their heart being detached from everything other than Allah and entirely loving and attached to Allah. And dhikr will help us with that. So that's one of the reasons they prescribe a lot of dhikr to their students. And may Allah give us to be good students and forgive us for falling short so much, and remove from our hearts all the arrogance that's in them, and lutf and afiyat, not take us to account for it, not let us leave this world and we don't experience His kibriya and His adama and lutf and afiyat. So the questioner asked, is telling a child who insists that he can't complete a task that he is capable teaching him ujab? In other words, he says he can't, and I tell them that he can because he's strong. It could subtly be doing that. It would be better to say, ask Allah and work at it, and Allah can give it to you. So to teach them hope in Allah rather than hope in themselves. Teach them to make dua and work hard. So you don't want them to be in a state of ajiz, right? Which is like incompetence. But la ilaha illallah, we want to teach them hope, and hope will be combined with work, hard work. So anticipate good because of Allah's good, and Allah's given them so much. Allah helped you do this before, so I believe Allah will help you do that. Let's ask Him and work at it, and inshallah you'll get it, right? You'll get it from Allah. Just shift the perspective a little bit to where they're relating to Allah. And it's for children, you notice you teach your children to make dua, Allah answers those duas. And it's a good lesson in Iman for the children. Remember, you didn't think that you could do this. You asked Allah and He gifted it. He gave you to do it. Remember, we did that hard, easier thing we worked on. Now we're going to work on something harder, but we're going to ask Allah and do it. And Allah knows best. And please seek from Allah. We ask, please recite Fatiha. Fatiha narzuqna al-sidqa wal-ikhlas wal-amal al-khalis al-maqbool. Please recite Fatiha, seeking from Allah to be honest, of pure intentions, that Allah give us pure, accepted works, good teaching, calling and guidance, that Allah be pleased with us, please the heart of Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and that the reward of this Fatiha that we recite goes to our parents, teachers, sheikhs, anyone we owe rights, and the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Fatiha. And again, this was beginning of guidance. Monday and Wednesday morning, we normally read Sacred Knowledge, Aims and Objectives. The reader's out of town this week. So inshallah, Wednesday, we'll read beginning of guidance again. Unless the new Muslim brothers show up, we might do their class, which hopefully will be Thursday as well. Inshallah, we place everyone in Allah's care. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.